Storm Center coverage. Of course, the big storm that we have been talking about for days now. It is finally here, but it is not done just yet. I want to introduce you to Kabir Begaria. He's at Pearson International. Kabir will be filling us in on exactly what's going on with travelers because, of course, this is a busy travel time. Lots of people want to get to and from the destination, whether by road, by rail, or by air, of course. And Melinda Singh, she's at our active our Storm Center desk. She'll take us through a lot of what's going on the radar. There are multiple types of precipitation ongoing with this system. So for now, though, I want to send it out to Kabir. Kabir, it is a buzz at Pearson International. How are things right now at the airport?
Well, Nadine, I was actually just reaching out to one of my contacts here to get more of a flight update. And to be honest, it's a relatively normal Friday as far as we can see. You can see the check-in areas behind me. They're not overly busy or anything. We're seeing a lot of people arriving for their trips that, of course, they want to get home and be there for Christmas and the holiday season. So what's happened right now is because we've mostly just been seeing rainfall, the aircraft don't necessarily have to be de-iced just yet. And that means that everything's running on time. There's a couple of cancellations on the board there that we can see going to destinations like Washington, D.C. and Vancouver. Why those cancellations are there right now, we don't know. It could be an aircraft issue on that side. But of course, we are noticing that there's more snowfall in other parts of the Golden Horseshoe, in parts of southern Ontario, and of course in portions of the eastern seaboard. And that's being reflected here. So, and I'm sure you're going to be giving us a little bit more of an update as to what's going on weather-wise and when we're going to see that temperature start to drop here. And of course, see that snowfall start. That's when we're going to be seeing more of the delays, more of the cancellations, and of course, it's going to start getting a little tumultuous for people that are looking to fly and get home in time for Christmas. So we're really hoping that it ends up staying relatively calm here, but with the weather that's going to be rolling in, that's going to be relatively, that's going to be a big question mark to say.
Yes, Kabir, you mentioned we're seeing that rainfall right now, but things are going to quickly deteriorate as we head into the next couple of hours. Here's a look currently at the radar. So a part of the Golden Horseshoe, including the city of Toronto, where Kabir is at the airport, we are seeing rainfall even in through areas of eastern Ontario into Ottawa. So along the border of Ontario and Quebec, we started off seeing snowfall, but we are looking at more warmer air filling in. So we are looking at that snow now transitioning to a little bit of a freezing rain mix, and in the next couple of hours continuing to see that rainfall primarily right along the border there, stretching in from Ottawa in through Montreal. But then as we head later into the afternoon, and Dean will talk about that a bit later, we'll be seeing that transition to snowfall. So that means icy conditions on the roadways. But in areas of southern Ontario, we are already starting to see that snowfall. Windsor, Sarnia, Goderich, and the winds will be quite strong, Nadine, as we head into the next coming hours.
Yes, Melinda, there are a couple of facets to the system. I've referred to it before as the DNA of this storm. Certainly the winds, one huge component, and the temperature profile as well. So we started off above the freezing mark for us across much of southern Ontario. Toronto still above freezing, but you'll see over the next few hours a drastic drop in our temperatures as we transition over from the rain that we're getting now to that snow. And that begins to take place just around, say, the mid-morning or so. So we drop from around +1 by about 10 o'clock or so, -3 for us by the time we head into 11 o'clock. And you'll see the temperatures continue to drop as we head through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours. So by 6 o'clock for us for this evening, we're just around that -11 mark for us. So that's one component of the storm, and that's just for Toronto. And you can see over the next few hours, widespread across the GTA, we're starting to see those temperatures through the afternoon really plummet across the area. So this, of course, is just one component of the storm. We have to talk about the squalls as well. For anyone doing any traveling, this is going to be a very, very hectic one. Let's head outside, head to Mark. He's got some information for us now.
So it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, just getting the car packed up, and I want to show you right behind there, you can see that's actually more like snow as opposed to actual rain. Actually, you can see it sort of on the truck there, just a little bit. The truck is nice and cold, so yeah, it's adhering to there. Now that I wasn't expecting this to be transitioned over to snow anytime soon, just because the front is still way down closer to Chatham and London than it is up closer to the GTA. But that, of course, as we get into the later morning, I'm looking at that transition probably around somewhere between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., depending on where you are across the province. But that's going to be the flash freeze, and right behind that, we're going to go from sort of this snow just sort of dropping a little bit, like you can just sort of see there, to like howling winds, because we got no wind in this at all. So stay tuned. It's going to be a long day.
Just hang on, Mark. Those winds are coming. Mark was mentioning the flash freeze rather. So if we take a look at conditions across the region as we head through the afternoon for us, you can see it's all snow across northern Ontario, looking at heavy snow and whiteout conditions. That'll take us into the Ottawa Valley for us. But the sort of pink fuchsia color around southern Georgian Bay down toward the shores of Huron, flash freeze and whiteout conditions for us, and also towards southern Niagara, just along the shores of Lake Erie there. And we're also looking at blizzard conditions that'll take us Friday into Saturday. And you'll see even around around Prince Edward County, also looking at the potential for some dropping temperatures mixing as well. And then as we head into a Saturday morning, you can see just a wide shot across the region, still looking at those squalls and blizzard conditions adjacent to the lakes for us. Let's head back to Pearson International. Kabir, you've got some updates for us. What's happening now?
Believe it or not, Nadine, I do. I'm actually watching the departures board here, which is just over to my left side, and I'm seeing more and more delays actually starting to come in from Quebec City, from Moncton. We're looking at Mexico City as well. So those delays, of course, will be prompted by, it could be heavy traffic, but also the shifting weather pattern that's impacting us, not just here in southern Ontario, but also in other portions of the country and of course in the region. So as you had mentioned, as we see that drop in temperature, that's when aircraft are going to need to go to the de-icing fields that are already set up, already armed and ready to get that fluid on the aircraft to ensure that icing doesn't occur. And the reason that's so dangerous is that if icing forms on the wing of an aircraft, it can impact its lift and therefore really hamper its flight and of course its efficiency, but more importantly, it can hamper the way that a wing generates lift. And that's why de-icing is so important and why pilots will not take any chances and go to the de-icing field, even as the temperature hovers around the 0 mark. So we could be starting to see that already as we get closer to the 8 o'clock hour, and that's something that's going to continue throughout the day. Now, let's go ahead and get a bit more of an update from Melinda.
Thanks, Kabir. Things are going to deteriorate as we head into the next couple of hours. Temperatures will be falling well below the freezing mark. We do have a question from Facebook. This is Chris White, and he wants to know how much snow will we get for the city of Ottawa. Right now in our forecast from Friday all the way into our Sunday, we have in the range of 20 to 40 centimeters of snowfall for the city of Ottawa. Areas in the snowbelt regions, cottage country, potentially 50 to 75 centimeters because we are looking at those strong winds bringing the lake effect snowfall. But let's take a look at the current temperatures, especially across the GTA. We can see areas like Kitchener, Hamilton at that freezing mark, but along the QEW, the 403, the 400, the 410, temperatures are above the freezing mark. I know when I left earlier this morning, it was quite warm outside, 4 degrees for Toronto Island and for the city of Toronto as well. But let's take a more widespread look at southern Ontario. Windsor, -10 already. We're seeing those strong winds. Those are those wind bars moving on your screen. That's very strong winds, bringing in that cooler Arctic air, and we'll slowly start to see that make its way in across the GTA as we head into the next couple of hours. I won't be surprised if we see that fall as we head towards 8:30, even potentially that 9 o'clock hour, seeing that changeover to a bit of mixing and then full-on snowfall as we head later into the evening, into the afternoon. And Nadine has more with that in terms of the timing.
Yes, Melinda, that's the other component. We talked about the temperature, that temperature, of course, having an impact on the precipitation types and transition. So this morning for us, you'll see we still have a bit of that rainfall for us through later on this morning, right along the shores of Lake Ontario there. But you notice back toward the west, we've got that snow coming in for us. And then we'll take this into the afternoon and evening for us. Now everyone's transitioned over to widespread snowfall. Now it's going to be widespread widespread snowfall across much of the region, but you notice there are a couple of areas where the hues are a little bit darker. So now we're starting to get the squalls developing for us across the region. So around the shores of Georgian Bay, coming off of Lake Huron, you can see down toward the Niagara region. Those are going to be the key points for us. And then if we take you into Saturday morning now, look at this extensive squall band coming across the Bruce Peninsula, just north of Barrie, extending through Cottage Country, and even crossing the Ottawa Valley for us now into Quebec. A couple of other areas as well that will be dealing with blustery winds as well as those squalls you see coming off of the eastern shores of Lake Ontario now there. So Prince Edward County up toward Kingston, anyone doing any traveling, this is going to be whiteout conditions for us there. And then around the southern Niagara region, one of the areas where we do have that blizzard warning in place. And then we stretch back now toward the shores of Lake Huron. You can see coming down Highway 21, so Kincardine down toward Grand Bend region, any one of those regions just adjacent to the shores of Lake Huron will be dealing with blizzard conditions, whiteouts as well with those squalls. And then we take this into Christmas morning now. Still those squalls ongoing. They've slumped south just a little bit, but ongoing now for us, say around the Saugeen Shores. That band extends across Barrie, extending around Cobourg region and all the way into eastern sections of Ontario. And you'll notice now across the GTA for Christmas morning, we've got some snowfall. So we could see one of these lake effect bands extend all the way into the GTA for us as we head into Christmas morning. So this could be a perfect Christmas for folks across the GTA. We take you into Sunday evening now. If you've got travel plans, still conditions will be quite treacherous for the region because we're still looking at that squall band now still across the Bruce Peninsula, just around Barrie, extending now towards the Belleville, Kingston region. Back across the shores of Lake Huron, still dealing with those squalls band and squall bands extending into the GTA by Sunday evening. Kabir, we're going to head out to you. What's been going on? Seems like a flurry of activity there at Pearson International. Folks just want to get to where they're going.
Get to where they're going, and they want to get there safely. And of course, there's a whole organization that runs the airport, and that's the Greater Toronto Airports Authority. And we actually have Rachel Bertone from their communications team here that's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on with these flights. And we're not necessarily seeing a ton of cancellations yet, right?
Yeah, you're right. The weather's still, it's just rain right now. As the rain changes into, freezing rain and snow, we might see some delays and cancellations later on today.
Later on today, of course, as that temperature drops, as Nadine's been mentioning and Melinda in our studio. So, Rachel, what do you think are some things that we should tell travelers to be prepared for if they're flying later today?
So if you're flying later today, first and foremost, check your flight status before you leave for the airport. That's like the first thing that you should do because we don't want you traveling in unsafe road conditions if your flight's canceled. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, drive according to the weather conditions. And the third thing that we want everybody to know is that if you're traveling to an international destination, you're going to want to arrive here 3 hours before and domestic 2 hours before.
Perfect. And there are tools at your fingertips, folks, of course, on the GTA's website, which are going to be very helpful as well. Do you want to mention some of those tips and tools?
Absolutely. So, you can book your spot in the security line, YYZ Express. It's a fantastic tool for people to use. You can use it this morning, and if you're in Terminal 3, you can use it in the afternoons and evenings. And then we also have a live wait times dashboard, so you can actually see how long the security lines are. It's a really great way for passengers to prepare for their journey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us this morning. And of course, we're going to be continuing to bring you updates on the situation that develops here as that temperature continues to drop. But let's go ahead and take a look back at the current weather with Melinda. Melinda.
Kabir, I do want to ask you a question. Are you seeing delays for flights traveling to Vancouver?
Very good question, actually, and I'm going to take a look at the board here. I have great eyesight. This is just very small font, okay? So don't judge me. I'm squinting. So as I'm looking here, the delays that I'm seeing are for Montreal. There are a couple of delays for Vancouver. It's mostly Eastern Seaboard related delays is what I did notice earlier, and it looks like cancellations are going to be for London, Washington, IAD. That's another big destination here. Philadelphia, Nashville is seeing a couple of cancellations as well. Why do you ask specifically, though, about Vancouver, Melinda?
Because we are seeing snowfall there as well, Kabir. We saw snowfall during the week, and another system is making its way in. Quite a bit of snowfall. Here's a look at the current radar. So we are seeing that snowfall persist into the morning hours. Let me just zoom in back here for you. Areas along the coast, Victoria, Tofino. We are looking at the potential to see some freezing rain, some ice pellets mixing in, and even earlier towards the day as well, we are seeing a bit of that freezing rain risk along the lower mainland into Abbotsford as more warmer temperatures nose in. We are going to be seeing, though, the potential for some rainfall and snowfall as we head later towards the day. Let's take a look at the current alerts first. Winter storm warnings have been issued by Environment Canada, slowly seeing the extreme cold warnings drop off, but the Arctic airflow continues to be in place for areas like Bella Bella and Prince Rupert. But in terms of the timing, there is that freezing rain and ice pellet risk that I mentioned there as we continue towards the morning hours. So that snowfall risk, a little bit of mixing in the lower mainland. But as we head around that 8 o'clock hour into 10 a.m. Pacific time, we will be looking at that warmer air flooding in across the lower mainland. So seeing that mixing of precipitation, and then behind that, we are looking at temperatures warming up even a bit more. So that means we're going to be seeing rainfall move in early Saturday morning into the day Saturday, and it will be quite heavy at times as well, potentially Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Very heavy rainfall will be expected across lower mainland and the coastal sections of BC, but how much rainfall could we be expecting as we head into our Saturday? Over western Vancouver Island, over 100 millimeters of rainfall, 50 to 75 is forecasted for Vancouver, Abbotsford, and to Chilliwack, Tsawwassen. You're into that 30 to 50 millimeter range. In terms of the snowfall through Saturday, 5 to 15 across Vancouver, north of the Fraser, into that 15 to 20 centimeter range as well. But it's primarily going to be a rain story for areas like Vancouver Island. They did see that snowfall throughout the early portion of the day, but we'll start to see that transition into that mixing precipitation and rainfall as we head into the coming hours, Nadine.
Yeah, we are looking at icy conditions not only across, parts of the Great Lakes, but into BC as well. And we've already seen several snowstorms across the west coast that has really snarled air travel and ground traffic as well. So it's been a very active period, to say the least. But want to get back to the story now. We move this forward into Quebec, where we'll also be talking about that flash freeze. It's going to be transitioning across Ontario, but as we head through this evening into southern Quebec, looking at that rapid drop in temperature for us following rain or snow. And certainly we've got that rain and snow for us. So some of the travel hazards that we've got to keep in mind for us across southern Quebec moving forward today into tomorrow. We've got the flash freeze risk. We've got whiteout conditions, as well as those winds. That's going to be a factor for us for today. We'll have the winds with the rain as well as the winds with the snow. So we move this from Ontario now. We take you into Quebec for us. You can see we're starting to see that rain pushing in across southern sections. Some of the videos here coming into us from Quebec, you can see a lot of that snow, and it looks like some melting on the glass there. But the winds have definitely picked up, and this is going to be widespread winds across Quebec for today. You'll see that winds with the rain for us from the St. Lawrence and southward, St. Lawrence and northward is going to be winds and some heavy snowfall for us. So this is by the afternoon. And then as we head into the evening now, you'll notice now we start to see that transition over to that snow for us in and around Montreal on the island, and then continuing to push eastward now. So we're moving across the eastern townships and continuing toward the mouth of the St. Lawrence, heading up toward the Gaspé region, where on the lower north shore, north of the St. Lawrence, we could be looking at some heavy snowfall for us taking us through this evening and into tonight as well. Some deeper hues of blues there will indicate some heavier snowfall totals. And now we take this into our Saturday morning, where we've got those squalls developing off the Great Lakes. We showed you earlier an extensive lake effect band. We can see it here now by Saturday morning, extending into southern Quebec and also through the St. Lawrence, looking at some heavier intensity snowfall from around, say, Drummondville up toward Trois-Rivières and toward the Quebec region for us. So this snowfall event, or at least the transition, will be with us through Ontario into Quebec, and of course we'll also be talking about Atlantic Canada. But before this system progresses there, we'll head back to Pearson International. Kabir, what's been the story? How are the passengers dealing with, the excitement, the storm, and, trying to get to where they're going?
As you can probably tell, it's a little bit frantic here, and any airport really is around this time of year, and right now that's additionally charged by the weather that we're experiencing. And in fact, in the time that we're speaking, every time when you come to me, every 3, 4, 5 minutes, I'm seeing our departure board here becoming more riddled with red and yellow flights that are delayed or canceled. So we're already seeing those starting to stack up. And of course, Rachel Bertone from the GTAA, the Greater Toronto Airports Authority, was just here with me. And she did mention that we're not going to be seeing those delays just yet. We're going to see them stacked on for later parts of the day. So how are passengers dealing with it, Nadine? Well, overall, the mood here is pretty normal for what you'd expect around the holidays. I would say a little bit of excitement mixed with tension as people are prepared and of course wanting to get to where they're going. But the reason that we're going to start seeing more and more of these delays is because as we get closer to the 8 o'clock hour, the 9 o'clock, the 10 o'clock hour, some of those aircraft have already completed their first flights, meaning that the rest of their schedules are dictated by their earlier flights. So if any other flight has been delayed or the aircraft was delayed last night getting into its destination where it would be spending the overnight period, that's why we're going to start seeing those delays starting to stack up later on into the day. But of course, we are going to be tracking this for you and bringing you more on these flights. And I'm going to do a little bit of research and find out more about why these flights have been canceled here. But first, let's go ahead and go back to the studio now with Melinda.
Thanks, Kabir. We are getting some questions from viewers that are watching us on social media, so I'm going to read some out here for us. So we do have one from Tim from YouTube. He's asking, what can Trenton in Ontario expect in terms of snowfall amounts? So for Trenton, we are looking around that 20 to 40 centimeter range through Sunday. A majority of that is going to be falling as we head later into our Friday, early Saturday morning. And then with those lake effect bands meandering, potentially looking at getting into that more heavier accumulation rate. We have another question here as well. I'm just reading it here. Payo Time Canadian Rams fan asks, watching from North Bay, Ontario, if you could get an update for North Bay and Hamilton, Ontario, please. Sure. So we're looking at Hamilton. Right now, they are in the blues, meaning into that 5 to 15 centimeter range. That's because we are looking at that warmer air persisting along the GTA, giving way to more warmer conditions, not seeing much transitioning over to that snowfall. But areas in North Bay, it is quite north. We are seeing a lot more frigid air in that area. So looking at that 30 to 40 centimeter range for North Bay. But you know, Kabir, we are also seeing, lots of cancellations, especially for areas right across eastern Canada. In terms of the overall storm, it is a huge storm. It wreaked havoc over the United States. We are seeing it move in across Ontario, northern sections of the province as well, and it will be making its way across Atlantic Canada. Nadine will touch on that later on, but even for Quebec, quite a bit of rainfall and snow will persist as we head into our Saturday. Here's another current look at temperatures across the GTA. So Kitchener, a few minutes ago we were at 0, now we're at -1. So we are slowly starting to see that cooler air filter in, Nadine, as well as those stronger winds will be quite a bit of a hazard as we head into the coming hours.
Yep, that's going to be the shifting focus with this storm as we progress through the day today. Those winds are expected to peak late afternoon and as we head into the evening. And I just want to give you here a sampling of what we can expect in terms of those gusts through the next few hours. So this is Pearson at Toronto for us, and you can see those wind gusts really increasing for us, peaking up to around, say, 91 kilometers per hour. And this is as we head through tonight for us. So through this evening and for tonight, looking at those winds gusting across the air. And it's not just Toronto. You can see it's widespread across the region. So we've zoomed in here across the Greater Toronto area, the QEW 401 corridor. And you can see once we head through this evening, those winds potentially gusting over 100 kilometers per hour along the Niagara region. We head around the QEW. So anyone doing any traveling through the evening hours, it's going to be very, very blustery for us. And then we skip around the western end of Lake Ontario across the GTA, following the 401 corridor in toward the east. And we're continuing to see those winds gust 90 to 100 plus kilometers per hour. So this is certainly going to be a very, very blustery evening and overnight. So that's just around the 401 corridor. We'll zoom it out for you across the region as a whole. And there you can see, taking us through the evening, it's not just the Lower Lakes region coming off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That's what's going to be tied into those squalls that we'll see developing later on this afternoon and taking us into the weekend. And through eastern Ontario, area as well. Even as we head into Saturday, although the winds will be lighter in terms of those gusts, still looking at some gusty conditions for us, not as strong as today. Now into southern Quebec, today will be a gusty day for you. So we've paused this through the afternoon for us for today, and you'll see those winds gusting well over 80, 90 kilometers per hour through the afternoon and into the evening. So very blustery conditions, and winds as well can affect air travel. We'll head outside to or head back to Pearson International where Kabir is. Kabir, give us an update.
So Nadine, I went and took a look at the departure board, and what I saw were delays right now stacking up to be about 15 minutes to about an hour, and that's pretty indicative of the early morning, beginning of the day delays before aircraft have experienced a lot of the weather that we've already been mentioning here on the show. But one thing I did want to say is you were saying about the winds there and how that can affect air travel. That affects a lot about what happens, not just in the air, but also on the ground, in addition to the ground workers, how bags get to and from the aircraft, but also how aircraft arrive here. So as much as there are aircraft that are going to be impacted, departing into that wind, there's special techniques that pilots have to employ, especially on large aircraft. Those wings are great for generating lift, but as wind blows left and right, that can get under the wing and, of course, impact takeoff. Now, on landing, that's a critical phase of flight. So in many respects, you're looking at maintaining that stability. And if that stability is hampered, well, that means a go around, and that can trigger more delays for that same aircraft that will be departing later today. Now, I'm seeing lots of people rushing by with their bags, running for their flights already, lots of families arriving. But if you take a look behind me, it is starting to pile up in terms of people checking in for their aircraft, for their departures. So we're going to bring you more on that, of course, as we see more of these delays coming in. The board is turning more and more yellow from destinations like LaGuardia, Philadelphia, Boston. But of course, we'll bring you more on that in a bit.
You know, Kabir, it reminds me of those Christmas movies where everyone's so excited to travel for the holidays, and then next thing you know, all your flights are canceled and you're stuck at the airport. So it's kind of like a movie coming to life,
Yeah.
sorry to say. So let's take a look
It really is, Melinda.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, while we're on that topic,
Yeah.
because I was just watching Home Alone, do you have a favorite holiday film while we're trying to get the viewers to take a break from the stress of travel? What's your favorite holiday movie?
I don't have a favorite one, but I watch Home Alone 1 and 2 every day religiously. But the Hallmark Channel plays constantly during the holidays at my house. What about you?
I love it. We'll bring you more from the airport in a little bit, but for me, it's Home Alone. I love that scene when they're running through the airport as a family. I have been there before, and I just saw a family do a very similar thing here. So, yeah, it's an evolving situation is what I'll say.
It's kind of like deja vu. All right, so let's take a look at the next 12 hours. So I did mention temperatures are above that freezing mark right now across the GTA. Toronto sitting at 3 degrees, but as that wind starts to make its way in closer across the GTA into eastern Ontario, the temperatures are going to be dropping. So here's a look at the next 12 hours. So at 11 a.m., we're forecasting that temperature to be around that -3, so we'll start to see that snowfall creep in as well, and the temperatures will continue to drop. The winds, that is what makes the wind chill, so temperatures are going to be feeling closer like -22, -24 as we head into the early evening hours. So if you are heading out, make sure you are bundling up and taking extra precautions on the roadways. A viewer on YouTube did ask, they were talking about the storm on January 17th, Nadine. I remember working that day, and you know, it was quite a hassle to get into the office that morning, but you know, I snowblowed my front yard there for about 2 hours. But with that storm, we saw snowfall rates exceed over 3-4 centimeters per hour. It was quite a very impactful day, but you know, they're asking, will we be seeing something similar with this snowstorm?
Well, you know what, Melinda, depending on where you are, the impacts from this storm will be different and varied. Say, for instance, if you are across the Toronto area, it's going to be definitely a windstorm. There will be snow, yes, once we transition over, but the heavier snowfall totals will be in those squalls regions where we've got the system snow once we transition, as well as the additional accumulations from the squalls. So let's just take you through some of the travel impacts that we are expecting for this afternoon, because things will just deteriorate through the day today. So you can see the areas highlighted there in pink around the Bruce Peninsula, southern Georgian Bay, the shores of Lake Erie towards southern sections of the Niagara area, and around Prince Edward County. Those are the areas where we're looking at some heavy snowfall, some mixing once we transition over, and the blizzard conditions that will develop today and head into tomorrow. But you can see widespread across southern, eastern, and northern Ontario. We're in that red. We're expecting high impacts with snowfall as well as those gusty winds. And then as we head the Ottawa Valley and into southern Quebec, we are looking at once we transition over this evening, they'll be dealing with those gusty winds throughout the day today and transitioning over with the risk for flash freeze. Let's head to Patrick in Quebec right now, in Montreal.
The storm started over southern Quebec last night. From last night to this morning, we got about 8 centimeters. It's now slowly turning into rain, and that's the forecast for the city of Montreal. But as you can see behind me, some of the planes will be grounded because some of the flight, especially the one going toward Toronto and southern Ontario, has been either delayed or canceled. Most of the school in southern Quebec has been closed for today because of the road condition, though it's their last day anyway, so it's not going to be a big problem. Over the next hour, it's going to be mainly rain, but this is going to change back into snow starting overnight or late Friday afternoon and overnight to Saturday.
And then as we head into Saturday, we'll still be dealing, thanks to Patrick for that update there from Montreal. As we head into Saturday, we'll still be dealing with hazardous conditions for travel for many of the routes around the region. You can see there into southern Quebec, we're looking at snow and freezing surfaces once we head into Saturday morning. Down the 401 corridor from eastern Ontario, dealing with some heightened squalls because of those winds coming off the Lower Lakes region. Southern Niagara, as well as in and around southern Georgian Bay, the shores of Lake Huron for us. And you'll see there, even coming off the eastern shores of Lake Superior toward the Nickel Belt region, travel conditions also expected to be hazardous. Now, in terms of timing of that precipitation for us this morning across the GTA, we're seeing that transition from the rain to the snow. Our temperatures are dropping off, and now we're into that widespread snowfall for us across the region. And we'll start to see those squalls pick up across the shores of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. We'll head outside to Mark, our storms hunter. Mark, the windscreen is covered with precipitation.
Oh yes, it probably is. I'm going to have to make sure that's running. But I wanted to actually show you that precipitation because you can see on the windshield it's still liquid, but I'm standing out here and I'm quite literally feeling the change in the temperatures. I'm in Grimsby right now, and I can actually feel the temperature dropping as I'm speaking to you, and I'm seeing a bit of a changeover from this rain all the way over to the snow. When I left Guelph this morning, we were a little bit higher elevation, and that meant that we actually had snow up there. When I came back down onto the QEW, that changed over to rain, and we've been sort of in rain all the way over here to Grimsby, and now that's beginning to switch over to the snow. So I think the frontal passage is quite literally happening right now, and I've had at least one friend who said it happened in minutes down in Port Colborne. Nadine?
So, Mark, essentially, you are the human thermometer. Yes, Mark is feeling the change in the temperatures. We picked this up for us for this evening where we left off with those squalls, and we see definitely those bands coming across southern Georgian Bay region, Lake Huron, around the southern Niagara region, and then extending into Prince Edward County, the Kingston region as well. So this is an evolving system moving through the region for us and impacting travel by rail, by road, and by air as well. Kabir, it's a busy day at Pearson International.
Nadine, it really is. And behind me, you can see the piling up that's happening for people that are preparing for these longer international flights that are being affected by this because, well, those aircraft have been spending overnight here at Toronto Pearson. And, well, of course, they're going to be impacted by gates that, of course, are occupied by aircraft overstaying their allotted times. And as I'm looking at the departure board, what we are seeing are a number of delays. In fact, on that first block of flights that are departing within the next 40 minutes or so, we're seeing more and more of those delays piling up now, a lot of them from Canadian destinations as well, in addition to Manitoba, Vancouver. With the system that's out there, we're actually seeing a lot of Vancouver flights getting canceled, in addition to New York, LaGuardia, Philadelphia, Boston, the Eastern Seaboard really being impacted by this. Now, of course, these flights are all departing within the next hour, or they were supposed to be. So those passengers have already started arriving at their gates. They're already there. They're through security. So we're not going to necessarily see them here in the terminal. But where we will be seeing people pile up, or rather when here, is going to be very shortly, as we see the longer term impacts throughout the rest of the day that these delays are going to start having. Of course, we are going to see that mostly as the temperature starts to drop, and we have to utilize that de-icing field, which will happen very, very shortly. Pilots, don't take any chances with that. But to bring us more about the weather right now, let's talk to Melinda.
Thanks, Kabir. Mark mentioned his friend in Port Colborne. He has tweeted, so here's a look at that tweet. He says, craziest frontal passage and flash freeze he has ever seen in Port Colborne. Rain instantly changed to snow over a few minutes and everything froze within a minute. So here's a look at that car completely covered in ice, and we're starting to see that progress throughout the next couple of hours. Here is also an area just off of Lake Erie, starting to see those growing wave heights as those winds are becoming quite strong in areas in the Great Lakes region are seeing that we'll be looking at that stage, meaning we are looking at those stronger waves moving on shore later today. But let's take a look again at the radar. Here is a look at that imagery. So I did draw a line here in pink. That is pretty much showing whether it is snow or rain. That freezing line showing whether it is snowfall or rainfall. So that indicates areas that are seeing that rainfall, but it is continuing to slowly move eastward into areas of the GTA, the west end of the GTA. Areas like Hamilton are already seeing snowfall, and we are also looking at those stronger winds starting to gust upwards to 60 kilometers per hour as well. Niagara Falls still looking at rainfall. Dunnville starting to transition over to some snowfall. Orangeville as well, transition over to that snowfall areas in Newmarket. Midland, Eastern Ontario are continuing to see that rainfall, potentially a bit of freezing rain for areas like Alliston and Barrie. In terms of the outages summary, Quebec has seen over 30,000 without power so far. Ontario over 24,000 so far, and BC over 5,000. BC is also dealing with some snowfall. Quickly, take a look here at the radar before we switch over to Nadine. So here is a look at the overall snowfall moving in across the lower mainland, a bit of freezing rain as well, and then areas from Victoria all the way into Tofino starting to see that rain snow mix. So freezing rain, ice pellets, and Nanaimo still in that snowfall range, but as we head later towards the day, we are going to be looking at that change over to ice pellets, Nadine, and then we'll start to see a bit more of widespread rainfall moving across BC for our Saturday into Sunday, but quite a bit of snowfall is on the way across Ontario and Quebec.
And we have a question from Dhruval Patel on YouTube wanting to know what to expect in the Ottawa area for today and into the weekend. So we'll walk everyone through what we can expect precipitation-wise. So already this morning in the Ottawa area, we had some lightning strikes. We'll be getting some freezing rain in the Ottawa region. We'll transition over to rain, and then everyone will be into that snow. So we'll start this off again for you this morning, where we're seeing that transition already back through southwestern Ontario. Along the 401 corridor through the morning, we'll see that transition over from the rain to the snow. We head into this evening for us. We're starting to see those squalls develop around the shores of Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, the Niagara region. And then as we zoom this out for you now, we'll take you into your Saturday morning. So eastern Ontario for us around the 401 corridor. So Prince Edward County, Kingston up toward Cornwall, Belleville, Gananoque. This is going to be a snowy drive. As we move up the Ottawa Valley for us, you can see Ottawa, we're into that light snowfall. And then we head northward through the Ottawa Valley. We're picking up on that snowfall, and we're seeing that extensive lake effect band extend all the way from Lake Huron, stretch across through cottage country and into western sections of Quebec. And this takes us into our Saturday morning. Much of the greater Toronto area Saturday morning not really dealing with any heavy precipitation. It's really the squalls will be the big story through the day on Saturday. Now we advance this into into our Sunday morning for us. And you can see those squall bands have slumped southward now. So the more intense band is now right across the Berry region, stretching from the Saugeen Shores. And that extends into, say, northern just around the 407, 401 corridor, Cobourg toward Prince Edward County. And then as we head into sections of eastern Ontario now, for Ottawa, Duval, you're looking at by Sunday morning, so Christmas morning, some light snowfall there for you. But again, travel around the snowbelt regions will be dealing with blizzard conditions. You'll see now along the shores of Lake Huron, along Highway 21, heading down from Kincardine to Grand Bend. You can see that lake effect band, that squall band extending toward the western end of Lake Ontario now. So Toronto is still getting into, by Sunday morning, some of that. And looks like the band across Lake Erie has slumped a little bit southward now by Sunday morning, but we're still dealing with it through Prince Edward County. So the weekend, Kabir, you're at Pearson International, will be, for now, it's okay, I guess, from what you've been telling us, but it's later on in the day for passengers who have flights perhaps even tonight.
Well, exactly, Nadine. You're right about that. It's interesting being in an airport in the holidays. I personally am a travel fan. For those of you that know me, know that, and I'm very passionate about being here at the airport. But I'm also very interested in seeing how this impacts people's Christmas plans and holiday plans as they have to go home and, of course, be with their families. We're seeing more and more of these flights get delayed. We're seeing the initial delays right now, but we are going to see those continue throughout the day. So what I would say is, of course, check your flight status before you go to the airport, folks, especially as we see tumultuous driving conditions. You're going to want to give yourself a lot of extra time. If you do have a trek to the airport, you're going to want to watch out. Now, behind me, there's a tour group that's leaving here. It's really sweet. They're all traveling together. So they've got their travel agency flag ready. We're seeing other families start to arrive, especially young children. So another thing I would definitely suggest is be prepared to get those snacks. Bring a water bottle, an empty one that you can fill up after security. You're going to need all of that if you are traveling today. Now, the thing that we're going to have to watch out for, Nadine and Melinda in the studio there, you know this, as the temperature drops, this rain that's settled on the ground is going to form into ice on the aircraft that are outside right now and not in the hangar, which is the majority of aircraft here at the airport. And as a result, that can lead to delays because we have to go get the aircraft de-iced, and that is a safety issue, and pilots usually will never take chances on that. They'll definitely go ahead and de-ice because that can affect lift and safety. And here in Canada, we're very used to these operations, especially in Toronto. Vancouver's used to it too, and I know that there are quite a bit of delays there going on. Actually, Melinda has more of an update for us weather-wise and social media-wise. What are people saying online, Melinda?
Yes, Kabir. So here is a video from Leamington, Ontario, where she's saying the video just doesn't even do justice because they are seeing those strong winds. We are forecasting those winds to gust upwards to 100 kilometers per hour as we head later towards the day as well. Here is another tweet from Canada Dad. What a mess. Lots of sleet and rain overnight mixing with snow. And he just cleared about 8 centimeters of snow and slush. So we are going to be looking at a bit of that mixing as we head towards the next couple of hours. But as we head into the later portions of the afternoon, another switch over to more snowfall. We do have another viewer here as well. In Mattawa, between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., about 15 centimeters of snowfall fell there, heavy and wet snowfall. Let's take a look back at the radar. So we are looking at that rain-snow line making its way eastward. Areas like Kitchener, Hamilton, starting to see that snowfall winds are starting to gust quite heavy as well, especially in areas like London, gusts upwards to 80 kilometers per hour, Windsor, gusts upwards to 60. We do have another viewer, but before I do want to mention that Buffalo is also gusting upwards to 96 kilometers per hour. That's right along the lake shores, and Ports Colborne as well, gusts upwards to 106 kilometers per hour. But Nadine, I will give this question to you. Raja on YouTube is asking, can we get an update for the Sudbury area?
Yes, exactly, Roger. We're bringing that for you right now. And thank you for your question. And thanks to all of our viewers, wherever they're joining us from, for their questions. So we're focusing now on northern sections of Ontario. And we have been dealing with snowfall across the north since yesterday as this system was in its infancy. So this morning you can see widespread snowfall for us all the way back from the border with Manitoba, extending across the shores of James Bay, across the Nickel Belt region for us, and down toward northern Georgian Bay region. So in and around Sudbury, you've got that snowfall taking you through this morning. As we continue into this afternoon and evening, you can see still very widespread snowfall and very blustery winds as well. It's not indicated here in terms of the gusts, but it is going to be a gusty day for us across northern Ontario. Those winds driving straight out of the north. We have some heavier intensity snowfall bands for us in and around Kapuskasing down toward Timmins. Sudbury, you are still into that snowfall. Areas along the shores of Lake Superior, around Highway 17, dealing with that snowfall for us. And then we continue into our Saturday morning, still snowing. Although the intensity now is a little bit lighter, say for us between Timmins down towards Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie, it is still going to be a breezy, windy one for us. So there will be some blowing and drifting snow, some whiteout conditions and reduced visibility. The heavier intensity snowfall will be back northward into far northwestern Ontario. But then as we transition through our Saturday evening and into our Sunday, we start to see some improvements now for us back toward northwestern Ontario. So Thunder Bay, you're now finally out of that snowfall, but again, still on the breezy side. So there will be some blowing snow. Most of the snowfall will be up toward the shores of James Bay as the track of the low progresses off toward the north and into the east. But by the time we head into Sunday morning for us, there you can see we're starting to see an ease in the snowfall for us across parts of northern Ontario. So that is how things are looking over the next, say, 24 to 48 hours as we head through the weekend. Now, in terms of general travel conditions for us, some of the areas that we've got to be concerned about, where we have the blizzard warnings for us around southern Georgian Bay, the Bruce Peninsula coming off the shores of Lake Huron, southern Niagara region. Those are the areas that will be the most impacted with the blizzard conditions. So absolutely hazardous and dangerous travel. You can see there even around Prince Edward County, but widespread across the region to the north, to the south, heading into southern Quebec as well. Throughout our Friday afternoon, that's when things will be intensifying with the winds and the squalls that will be developing. We'll head to Pearson International. Kabir, you have been tracking flights to see how things are progressing there. What's happening?
Well, that's right. And according to the Greater Toronto Airports Authority, this is the busiest travel season of the year for them. And of course, given what we've experienced over the last couple of years, this is the first one that's going to be full on. They're looking at passenger numbers, or rather expecting passenger numbers that could meet or exceed in some ways what we had been seeing in 2019 and 2018. So that in itself speaks for what could be happening here later on in the day, Nadine, with all of the weather that we've been tracking, all those snow squalls that we're seeing in other portions of the country and the area. That's something that we're going to be seeing right here at Pearson Airport. People are piling up behind me here. You can see some of the check-in areas being littered with people that are looking for assistance from the airlines, because quite a number of flights are now being delayed later on into the day. I'm taking a look here and we're seeing delays going to Halifax, flights to Montreal. A few of those have been canceled. New York City, and of course Philadelphia, Boston. Those areas are looking at full-on cancellations or delays, and we're looking now at those delays becoming longer and longer and longer, and that comes from aircraft that are coming in from those areas being held up at those destinations, of course. So we're going to be continuing to bring you more updates on that. In fact, I'm going to bring you more updates specifically on what and why certain flights have been canceled. So while I do that, I'm going to go ahead now and give it back to Melinda.
Thanks, Kabir. Another thing that I did want to mention is those winds. Very strong. These are what we have seen in the past 24 hours. Majority of this is actually the last few hours. So I did mention Windsor, gusts upwards to 81 kilometers per hour. The London, Sarnia area, gusts upwards to 60. I'm assuming the city of Toronto, the Greater Toronto area, is in that 40 to 50 range as of right now. Ottawa and Quebec, we are seeing those strong winds gusting upwards to 100 kilometers per hour, 96 for Quebec, 85 for Gatineau, 54 for Montreal. So the winds are definitely packing quite a punch, and we will continue to see that as we head later towards the evening. But in terms of the forecast, and we are looking at the radar once again, here is that the yellows are indicating heavy amounts of rainfall for eastern Ontario that will be impacting places like Ottawa as we head later in the next couple of hours. Snowfall starting to push into southwestern Ontario, and we are seeing those strongest winds for areas like along the lake shores as well. And you know, Mark, we are looking at seeing those strong winds, especially for areas along the lake shores, and potentially winds and storm surge could potentially be quite a bit of a factor.
You know, as you can see here, I'm actually traveling on the QEW towards Fort Erie. Sort of that's my destination to sort of see what's going on. It's sort of in the worst hit area, the potentially worst hit areas. Now, what is kind of interesting is that we're still sitting above freezing on the QEW. Not that many cars on the road, but no accumulations of snow. At this point, it's just beginning to make that transition. I'm sitting at that 1 degree above zero as I'm traveling on this on the road here on the QEW. And I do expect that frontal passage to happen fairly soon. I was talking to one of my friends in Port Colborne, and he said it went from well above zero to well below zero in just minutes. Everything froze up very, very fast. And if you notice, the road's just a little bit shiny, which means that's actually a lot of rain on the road. Now, how much of that is going to freeze up? You know, that's the big question. Will we see any sort of evaporation with the cold, dry air? Or will this simply turn into a sheet of ice on the QEW? It's all about the transportation problems that we're going to see with this system. So, of course, it's a very, very busy travel day, and that's definitely going to cause real disruptions. Back inside to you.
Yes, Mark, drive safely, and hoping that for anyone who will be heading out onto the roads today, they will be safe as well. Melinda was talking about the winds, Mark talking about conditions on the roads. We're focusing on the winds now for us, because as we progress through the day today, we'll start to see that really increase, especially along the shores of the lakes. So this morning, we head into the afternoon for us. You can see we're zoomed in now right around Niagara, the western end of Lake Ontario, and along the shores of the lakes. And you can see by the time we head into this evening, this is when we're expecting some of the peak wind gusts across the region. They could be 100+ kilometers per hour in and around the Niagara region. And you can see southern Niagara where we do have that blizzard warning in place. And anyone traveling along the QEW, heading around the western end of Lake Ontario, heading along the shores of the lakes, we could be seeing those gusts 90+ kilometers per hour. Now, once you head away from the lakes, the winds will be a little bit lighter. However, it is still expected to be very, very blustery. We'll take you now into the overnight hours for us, and we're still on the windy side for us across the GTA, and then eventually things beginning to ease a bit. But you can see this is still quite impressive for us in terms of a gust across the region as we head into our Saturday. We'll take you zoomed out just a bit, and you can see widespread gusty winds for us across the region throughout this evening. And then as we head into our Saturday and Sunday, despite the fact that the winds will have been diminished, we're still looking at those squalls continuing, because if we take a look at this legend here, we're in that range of say 50 to 70 kilometers per hour in terms of a gust. So this is still a windy one for us as we head into the weekend, although we will likely be below the threshold for those strong wind gusts across the region. If we take you into Quebec, they too will be on the gusty side. This is for today for us. So we're getting into rain and windy conditions, particularly for areas south of the St. Lawrence. We'll see those gusts 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour through the morning and into the afternoon. And as we progress the afternoon and into the evening, the mouth of the St. Lawrence, you'll see those winds very, very blustery, perhaps up to 100 kilometers per hour. Kabir is at Pearson International. A flurry of activity going on with those passengers there.
A ton of, of activity. You're so right. And I love the word flurry. There's flurries inside, flurries outside. We're going to see more of those flurries here at Pearson Airport. And I'm sure you guys have more information on that. But from the travel perspective, folks, it is building up here. We are seeing people arriving here knowing that their flights are delayed, some canceled. If your flight is canceled, reach out to your airline first. Don't come to the airport just yet, because most of the time, if you do come here, that's going to result in you having to wait around for a later flight in the day. So be aware of that. But right now, a lot of these flights are being delayed because of weather, and that's not a surprise. We are seeing cancellations for Vancouver. We're seeing cancellations for Montreal. Not really for Winnipeg. Those flights to Winnipeg are running on time right now because those aircraft are likely here and haven't had to deal with any of the outbound issues with snowfall just yet. But we will be seeing that later on. We're seeing Halifax getting delayed now for a few hours. So quite a bit of these flights are starting to pile up. And this has happened over the last hour. We've been bringing you this coverage, of course, over the last hour. And in that time, it's amazing to see how quickly things have shifted from when we began to where we are right now. And if I look outside as well, we are taking a look at that rainfall really impacting us. That's going to continue to turn in to snow. To tell us more about how that process is going to happen, when it's going to happen, over to you, Melinda.
Thank you, Kubi. Before we talk about Ontario, let's take another look at BC, because areas like Nanaimo, they saw some snowfall, but on top of that, they're seeing that changeover to freezing rain, ice pellets. So Vlad on Twitter is showing more of that icier conditions moving across Nanaimo, British Columbia, and as well, Ryan, who is in the Lower Mainland, starting to see those ice pellets and snow pellets hitting the roof of his car. He said it looks a bit more like popcorn. That was at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time. But in terms of the radar, I did mention we saw some snowfall throughout the earlier parts of the morning, and now transitioning over to a bit of that freezing rain ice pellet mix, especially across areas of the Lower Mainland and Western Vancouver Island, Victoria, seeing that changeover as well. But they are looking at a bit more of a heavier amount in terms of the ice accretion, especially as we head into our Friday, into our Saturday. We are looking at that 10 to 15 millimeter range, potentially at that freezing rain risk along the mountains, a bit more higher depending on elevation. But we are going to be seeing that snowfall starting to wind down as we head into our Saturday, persisting along the mountainous regions, but at sea level, we are now starting to see that freezing rain ice pellet mix. And then as we head later towards the morning hours, as we head into Saturday, heavy amounts of rainfall will be impacting the Lower Mainland. 50 to 75 millimeters of rainfall is forecasted for Vancouver. Potentially 75 to over 100 millimeters of rainfall is expected for areas in Western Vancouver Island. So in terms of the winds, they are going to be a bit more on the breezier side as we head later into the afternoon here. I'm just pulling up my map. So we are seeing those winds starting to ease, but as we head into our overnight hours, some stronger winds, gusts upwards to 65 kilometers per hour, widespread across Vancouver Island into the Lower Mainland for our Saturday. But we are seeing upwards to 100 kilometers per hour in areas across Ontario and Quebec, Nadine. Some areas have already seen that, and that will persist into the coming hours.
Yes, yes, Melinda. As a matter of fact, I want to address one of the questions from Tom Lincoln, wanting to know what to expect in the London area as we move forward. So we'll just firstly start off with what conditions are expected to be like across the region as we head into this afternoon. And you can see there, London down toward the southwest, just to the north and to the south of you. That's where we are expecting blizzard conditions heading into the weekend. We've already seen our transition over with our temperatures that have dropped significantly, but specifically for the London area, you are definitely into that region where we're looking at those winds increasing for us for today, as well as that widespread snowfall, and you will be impacted with that snow. So through this morning, again, we've already transitioned over to our snowfall. We'll take you into the afternoon for us, so you can see the intensity of the snowfall in and around London down toward the southwest. It's a little bit lighter, but if you are planning on traveling, say for instance distance up toward the shores of Lake Huron. That's where you'll be getting into blizzard conditions and whiteouts as well. And even as you head across the shores of Lake Erie in toward the southern Niagara region, we will be dealing with some heavier snowfall there with those winds coming off the lakes. You can see into Saturday morning now, those bands have slumped a little bit southward. So in and around the London region, the 401 corridor, the 402 as well, dealing with some lighter snowfall. But again, just to the north, you will be looking at that heavier snowfall intensity for the region into Saturday. And by the time we head into Saturday night and Sunday morning, a sliver of opportunity here for us if we've got any traveling around the 401 corridor for us, either east or west of London. But take note, if you're heading in and around Cottage Country, there will be squalls that will be continuing into this weekend. And we're going to head outside to Mark right now, who is on the roads. Mark, what route are you on right now?
I'm on the QEW, just coming into St. Catharines, just coming up to the 406. And you notice that there's not any snow accumulating on the roads. The QEW is fairly open right now, not a lot of cars on it. Normally you'd expect it to be quite packed, and it's not. That's good, because I think people are actually taking this storm fairly seriously and saying, you know what, I'm going to stay off the roads today. But so far, so good. I haven't seen any sort of collisions or accidents or closures yet. But that frontal passage has not happened where I am. Other areas like Port Coburn, I know that it has transitioned over, and it's actually quite cold down there. Behind that front, the big deal that we're going to have is the very strong winds. So combine that with the type of precip we're seeing now, and those very strong winds with the very cold temperatures, you're going to get a lot of blowing snow, whiteout conditions, and that's going to be the real danger with this. We're not expecting huge amounts of snow, but if we do have full whiteout conditions, it's going to be very difficult to drive. And actually, literally as I'm speaking to you, I'm seeing the rain switching over to snow, and it's starting to accumulate a little bit on my windshield. So definitely getting very close to that, jumping across that temperature gradient, and where it's going to drop quite a bit colder. I'm headed south now down towards Port Coburn, and so I will definitely let you know, what we see and when we get that transition. So for now, though, back inside the Unity.
Yes, thank you so much, Mark. And that's going to be one of the regions that will be dealing with those winds increasing and that snowfall accumulation as well across the region. Like Mark was saying, we haven't seen that transition just yet, but it will happen. Kabir is at Pearson International. Kabir, it sounds a bit louder now, so I guess it's getting quite active still.
It is getting active, Nadine. We are looking at this traffic starting to increase, and you can see the people rushing around behind me with their bags, of course, ready to check in for. These are long-range flights. We're in partially the international departures area for Air Canada, as well. Other carriers are down toward the other end here, and we are seeing people starting to arrive for these long-range flights that are going to be departing later on into the afternoon. And many of those flights haven't been impacted just yet, but they will be. As we were talking just to Mark there, Nadine, I know that he was mentioning we're seeing the switch from rain into snow. That's what's going to be the killer here in terms of time, and that is what is going to cause the most impact in terms of delays, because that means aircraft have to go to the de-icing fields, which are ready, but of course that means an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes. Pilots, of course, are ready to make that call, and most of the time that call is very, very much made. It's made with the utmost care and respect for safety, and of course for passenger comfort, making sure you get to your destination on time. So my advice to you folks, if you're heading out to travel today, make sure you do check your flight status online. Go to the Toronto Pearson website, or any airport that you're flying to. If you are coming to Toronto Pearson, check with your airline, your carrier, and if you are delayed, don't head to the airport too early. Give yourself extra time though. Now let's go ahead and talk to Melinda.
Thanks, Kabir. Those were such good tips for people who are traveling out for the holidays. Let's take a look at Twitter once again. This is David Piano. He's between Crystal Beach and Port Colborne. He does quite a bit of storm chasing. Here's a look at blizzard conditions. So blowing snow, those strong winds gusting upwards to 80, possibly 100 kilometers per hour along the lake shores, and some areas in along Lake Erie has already seen quite a bit of power outages as well. But I do want to take a look at the overall temperatures. I mentioned Kitchener throughout the past hour. We started the live stream at 0 degrees. Now they're at -4. So slowly starting to see that front make its way across portions of the GTA. Toronto sitting at 3 degrees, Burlington 1, as well as Hamilton. But let's take a more widespread look at seeing the overall temperatures. Windsor at -12 currently, -8 for London, and Ottawa at 1 degree with some rainfall, even across the north. Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie seeing temperatures below the freezing mark. And they are going to continue to drop as we head into the coming hours, as we head towards that 10 o'clock hour, seeing those temperatures drop 1 degree as we head into the afternoon. That's when we'll start to see those temperatures well below the freezing mark, and the wind chills, that's going to be packing quite a punch as well. Strong winds coming off from the lakes, gust upwards to 80 kilometers per hour. The wind chill values into the -20s. Even across the United States, we are seeing the temperature is quite frigid. Here's a look at the wind chill forecast for this afternoon. So places like Houston, New Orleans, those wind chills are downright cold, Nadine, and even areas in Ontario will see that wind chill progress into Quebec, and the snowfall. That's one of the main topics here.
Yes, we have a question from YouTube wondering about snowfall accumulation for the Toronto area. Now, for Toronto specifically, this is not really going to be a huge snowstorm event. You can see if we take a look at the wide shot of how much snow we are expecting across the region, Toronto generally in that range of 5 to 15. And of course, we already started off with the rainfall. It's really once we transition over to that snow, and once we get perhaps a couple of those squalls just infiltrating into the region as we head into the weekend, that's where we pick up our accumulations. But we're not really on the high end with regard to snow. But blowing snow for anyone out on the roads will be an issue, despite the fact that we're not expecting heavy accumulations. In terms of who sees some of the heaviest snowfall totals, that's where we're getting into those squalls, extreme southern Niagara region. We can see around Huron, Perth, Bruce Peninsula, southern Georgian Bay region. And then as we stretch it back into northern Ontario, it's been snowing across the north since yesterday. So you can see across northeastern Ontario, North Bay up toward Sudbury, Timmins region, we're looking at 20 to 40, maybe even 50 centimeters of snowfall with this long duration snow event for them. Back toward northwestern Ontario, you can see we're in that range of 20 to 40 north of Lake Superior. The extreme northwest, the amounts drop off. And then once we head into southern Quebec, eastern Ontario, also looking at some impressive totals here, because of course we will have some of that lake effect, those squalls coming off the eastern side of Lake Ontario, and then we'll look at that snowfall continue into southern Quebec, and most of that snow in Quebec will be north of the St. Lawrence. So let's time this out for you now. We've already switched over to snow across southwestern Ontario. That front is moving through. We'll see how temperatures drop through the day today. By the time we head into this evening, temperatures are now below the freezing mark for us across the region. For everyone, we'll be into that widespread snowfall, but now the winds will be picking up and those squalls will get going for us. So across the Toronto area, heading up the 400, the Highway 10, Highway 6, Highway 8, the snowfall intensity not as heavy, but it will be windy, so there will be some blowing and drifting snow, some local whiteouts. The areas that we are concerned about is once you head around the QEW down toward Niagara, that's where we're getting into some of those squalls, as well as around southern Georgian Bay region. We take this through the overnight. We bring you now into your Saturday morning. Well-defined snow squall bands now for us, coming off from the Bruce Peninsula, Tobermory region, extending just north of Barrie up toward Paris Sound, extending into Cottage Country and anywhere along the shores of Lake Huron. Our Mark is headed down toward Port Colborne. Roads look okay for now, Mark, but I will say almost guarantee that that's not going to be the case for later on today into tomorrow.
Absolutely not. Nadine, I'm actually just switching over right now. I'm watching the temperature begin to drop very quickly, and what I'm
Well, it seems as though we've had a little bit of an interruption there in Mark's transmission. We'll get back to Mark in just a bit. But just to bring you again into your Sunday morning to show you what you can expect. Merry Christmas Sunday morning. It's going to be a perfect Christmas for folks across cottage country because there will be falling snow as well as snow on the ground. Mark seems to be back. We'll head back outside to Mark now.
Hey, Nadina, I've got a little bit of a delay on my transmission, so hopefully you can hear me. But yeah, I've been driving quite literally through the transition from warm temperatures to cold temperatures right now. I pulled off at the side of the road because I want to show you the actual, where the snow, how much snow is falling. Definitely gone from rain to now full snow, and I'm watching the temperatures drop. I've seen it at 1 degree, now down to 0, now down to -1. So that transition is happening very, very quickly. On top of that, I'm already seeing the winds. And that's going to be the big thing with this storm is how strong those winds are. And they're going to be blowing that snow, visibility already dropping very quickly where I am. And I'm not all the way down to Port Colborne yet. But yeah, we can already see conditions deteriorating, and this is this is going to be start to push through the Niagara region and up towards the GTA. But it's that Niagara region right along the shores of Lake Erie that are really going to cause the problems. That's where I'm headed right now, and well, hopefully, I can actually make it down there through this rapidly deteriorating conditions.
Well, Mark, this whole system has been about trying to get to where we're going in the nick of time because we've got the winds, we've got the falling temperatures. Now we're going to head outside to Pearson International, I should say head to Pearson International for Kabir. Kabir has been at the airport gauging how things have been going.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm seeing these things here really starting to slip, Nadine. I'm seeing a lot of delays. Actually, we have basically a series of screens here. We have about 6 screens. The first screen are flights departing, I would say, within the next hour or so. And there used to be a few flights there that were still in white. Now every single flight is delayed that's departing in the next hour. As we take a look at flights that are going out to the eastern portions of the nation, to Atlantic Canada, we're seeing cancellations there, a lot of delays, and we're not seeing these delays as short as they once were. Now we're looking at these delays being an hour, in some cases 2, 3, 4 hours, and it won't be long before this starts to trickle down for the rest of the day. This was the trend that I had mentioned earlier on. That has to do with aircraft, of course, that are coming in from other destinations. They could either be getting stuck there or here, and then we have to de-ice and, of course, prepare as we hover around that 0 mark, which I know that we're already starting to hit. So travelers are very much ready to get to where they're going, but we're not too sure on when they're going to make it. Luckily, still a couple of days left until we get into Christmas, and hopefully people make it on time for the holidays. But now let's go ahead and check in with you, Melinda.
Thank you, Kabir. Not only are we seeing those flight delays, but across the GTA, majority of Southern Ontario, we are seeing traffic delays on the major highways. Here is a tweet from our chief meteorologist, Chris Scott. He is talking about areas that are behind this cold front. They are seeing that snowfall and travel is a bit more tricky. We are seeing slowdowns across the 401 from London all the way down into Windsor, but across majority of the GTA, it's still on the green side, meaning traffic is as normal because we are currently seeing rainfall, but we are going to start to see that transition as we head later into the coming hours. He also mentioned that we will be looking at icy roads as we see that transition over. And another note to mention, it's not going to be as big of a snowstorm for the GTA as it is going to be for many areas surrounding the GTA. But in terms of questions, we do have many viewers asking about the forecast for Peterborough. So in terms of the overall snowfall accumulations through Sunday, we are looking at potentially 20 to 40 centimeters of snowfall for you. Currently, we are looking at some rainfall in the radar. Here we go. I'm just going to pull it up here. All right, so seeing that rainfall moving in, the pink's indicating a bit of some mixing precipitation, and we'll slowly start to see that make its way eastward, and the freezing line will move in, and we are going to be looking at snowfall as we head later into the coming hours. But right now, we are seeing areas with that frontal passage moving through areas like Orangeville, Georgetown, Milton as well, starting to see that transition over to a bit more of a rain-snow mix, and then we'll start to see that snowfall in a couple of hours. But Mark is down along the QEW. So Mark, what are you starting to see right now? Are we seeing snowfall?
Oh yeah, we're seeing snowfall. I actually had to jump out of the car just to check the temperatures right now. And I'm sitting at about 1 degree still, and my anemometer, oh, there we go. We are now getting down just a little bit below zero, which means that this is the front itself right now. And we're definitely, it's going from, it was rain, now over to snow, and it's just going to get worse and worse. The big issue with this one was always going to be the transportation system. So yeah, like aircraft, we're talking about driving around. This is right around Christmas time, big travel days right now. And this is going to make a mess of things. So I'm really hoping everybody got their everything done ahead of time, because if you haven't, it's probably too late now to be running around with any, it's going to be tricky, not absolutely dangerous right now, but definitely getting towards the dangerous part, especially if you're down in Niagara where I am, and I'm going to be getting more and more into this system as I get closer to the Lake Erie shoreline. Nadine, although I'm guessing it's warmer in the studio right now.
It's quite tropical in here, Mark, but yeah, you were talking about varying conditions. It all depends on where you are, the winds, the transition to the snow. You can see there this morning we've got that widespread snowfall transitioning, but we'll take you off toward the east as we follow this system in towards southern Quebec. It's going to be a rain story, especially for Montreal, the St. Lawrence, and southward through the morning, and it's going to be gusty as well. But you notice we skip across the St. Lawrence, and this is going to be a snow story taking us through the afternoon for us. And then once we head into the evening, that's where we see the transition from the warmer temperatures and the rain to the cooler temperatures, or I should say colder temperatures and the snow. So this is where we're picking up the risk for that flash freeze in through southern Quebec as we head into the evening hours for us, and everyone transitioning over to that snowfall. And this is going to be a gusty one as well. We'll take you into your Saturday morning in and around Montreal. We've got that light snowfall. We head up the St. Lawrence toward Quebec City, and just north of it, we're picking up on some slightly heavier intensity snowfall. But you see this band here, the snow coming in for us. This is coming in all the way from the Great Lakes with those squalls that will be developing off the shores of Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Georgian Bay as well into our Saturday evening, still looking at that snow. But the other more widespread system or story for us across the region will be the winds, very blustery for today into the overnight period, and then eventually those winds will be easing a bit as we head Saturday and into Sunday. The strongest of the winds will be confined toward the shores of the lakes for us. In towards southern Quebec for today, a windy one for us. You can see as we pause this through this afternoon, watching for some widespread gusts, 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour heading into the evening. Winds picking up as we head eastward through the St. Lawrence for us. So Saguenay, for instance, picking up a gust of around 97 kilometers per hour. Very blustery winds for us through the mouth of the St. Lawrence. Winds and precipitation, two things that impact travel not only by road and rail, but also by air as well. Kabir.
That's right, Nadine. I'm standing here kind of shaking my head because I was a private pilot for a number of years. And as a result, I know the effects that these situations, precipitation combined with cooling temperatures and wind, can have on an aircraft. And in many ways, when you're flying light aircraft, smaller aircraft, that's not something that you can fly in. But luckily with today's technology, these large jets that are carrying basically all of these passengers are more than capable to handle. There are pretty incredible de-icing systems on there, rain repellent, all of that. But I will say that before flights do get off the ground, there's a lot that needs to happen, and that's what's going to lead to a lot of these delays. I just had a gentleman stop and ask me actually about what was going to happen and how it was going to affect his daughter who's flying out to Sauble Beach today. And I did say that because of the freezing temperatures, that's going to cause the biggest delay. If you're heading out now, you're going to be relatively okay, but later on in the day, watch out, check your flight status. But first, now let's go ahead and go back to Belinda.
So Kabir, now we are starting to see that wind change direction, especially across YYZ. So we are looking at those stronger winds making its way in, gusts upwards to 60 kilometers per hour downtown Toronto. Areas in Kitchener looking at that as well. Across areas of southwestern Ontario, those gusts upwards to 80 kilometers per hour. So we are going to start to see some more icy conditions as we head into the next hour or two, especially across the GTA. Widespread current look at the temperatures, minus 12 for Windsor, 2 degrees currently for the city of Toronto, still dealing with that rainfall. Things will change within 1 to 2 hours, especially across the west end of the GTA. Let's take a look at northeastern Ontario. Timmins, minus 4 with some snowfall. It is quite cool. We are continuing to see snowfall. They're not looking at much rainfall across northeastern Ontario. Quite a bit of snowfall, and we will be looking at those snow squalls pushing across the area as well. Potentially whiteout conditions as gusts will be gusting upwards to 90 kilometers per hour and producing a whiteout conditions. But in terms of the snowfall forecast for northeastern Ontario, areas like Sudbury, North Bay into that 20 to 40 range, north of Highway 11 into that Timmins region, 30 to 50. Sault Ste. Marie, you're looking at potentially 30 to 50 centimeters as well. And even areas across northwestern Ontario, you're on the range to see 5 to 15 centimeters of snowfall. But where Mark is, we are looking at quite a bit of snowfall starting to make its way down to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to pull off here just so you can get an idea of how much snow is falling. With the conditions have changed so rapidly. I'm just in St. Catharines, headed down towards the Port Coburn, Crystal Beach area, and I can tell you that we're losing visibility fairly quickly right now. I'm just going to step out of the car and come around in front of the camera, and I can say that from when I last talked to you, which I think was about 5 minutes ago, it wasn't that bad, to right now. The winds have picked up considerably. The snow's beginning to pick up as well. Temperature is dropping. This is the frontal passage here in St. Catharines now. So these conditions, this is just the beginning of this whole system. Right now, you can still see clear roads. That is not going to last for very long. So Nadine, back inside to you while I jump back in the car.
Well, this is where the danger comes in now for us with the falling temperatures. Roads are still wet, so this is where we have that concern for that flash freeze, but everyone is going to be in that snowfall. Kabir, you're at Pearson International. We're hoping that, you know, the passengers will have a Merry Christmas, that they'll be able to get to their destination on time.
I really hope so as well, and I hope that everybody here is able to deal with all of this quickly and efficiently and have a very safe travel season. Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone. Wishing you a Merry Christmas as well as a white Christmas across Ontario and for Quebec.